Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the Future Sox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, man. What's going on?
Just enjoying being able to watch baseball. That's pretty much about all I got to say about that. How are you doing?
Spring training baseball. I'm fine.
Oh, we got one right off the bat. Please
Mm,
sign Verdugo. Oh boy.
to do what
Your
exactly?
thoughts?
Yeah, to do what? I wonder how much. I
um,
wonder how much money he like wants. I'm kind of surprised he's not signed.
I'm kind of surprised as well, but then when you see him starting fights from the dugout all the time, are you really that shocked? I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Seems like guys like that kind of weed themselves out like every couple of years. Like one guy that does that just kind of disappears.
yeah, I'm like get like it's like remember Obi Rasmus,
Yes.
like these guys that just they were like prospects and they were like these kind of fiery dudes and then they're not good anymore and then it was bad and then it was just done. Yeah, I'm a little surprised he's not in a camp. My guess is he's asking for too much money.
Yep. So Josh Nathan Strong says, anyone in college ranks catching your eye already?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the top of the class like is been a little bit underwhelming, but there's been guys that have kind of, like moved up in the order. Like we've talked about that Ava Arquette of Oregon State and Merrick Houston, Wake Forest. Obviously we don't always trust the numbers at Wake Forest, but he's a plus shortstop at least. Yeah, there's some names. High school class is good too. College seemingly makes more sense at 10, but we'll have a bunch of draft shows coming.
So I kind of want to know the background on this. I didn't see anything about this. Chris Proctor mentions, did you see the Mariners broadcast was blaming the White Sox for the Mariners not making the playoffs? Um,
I did not. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to know because it can't be Perlander Baroa. I mean, is it
Oh,
the
is
trade?
it
Gregory
oh, is it
Santos being injured?
no, do you think it's because the White Sox lost all the games to the AL Central and all those teams made it instead of the Mariners, who don't have any
Okay, that's
offense?
fair.
Crimea River Mariners, go buy some bats.
Yeah, exactly. Go spend some money. So it is top 30 time of year for Future Sox right now, and we just released the top 30 just miss list today. So you have any overall arching thoughts before we get into some of the personnel that is on this list?
I mean, it's better than the last couple we did. It's a little bit deeper than we've seen in a while. I mean, there's obviously guys that have like fallen off the list, but then there's also guys who, obviously some of us had on our personal 30s, which will come out next week. I mean, prospects, and we didn't put them in order. We just went alphabetical, but I mean, like prospects 31 through 40 theoretically could be at the back end of the 30. I mean, the guys are all pretty similar. I mean, guys like Tyler Schweitzer, who have been on the list before, Ronnie Hernandez, it's a young 19-year-old catcher, has been on the list before. I think there's buckets of players, obviously. I think there's a few relievers who, we might see in the big leagues. So yeah, I always kind of like writing that one, and I will say like whittling it. Sometimes it's hard to find 20 names. This time it was like I left some people off that I could have put on.
Yeah. And to echo Joshua Nathan Strong that this is the best that this list has ever been, I can't disagree. It's like there's actually talent in the system now, and some people disagree that maybe it's not in the top five, possibly. Um, but to me, it definitely looks like the depth is at least 100% better than it has been pretty much ever.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
don't know if he meant like, did he mean today's list or just the list in general? Because I mean, I think the just missed is evidence of like who's on the other list. I mean, they got 6 top 100 guys that are pretty universal, plus Grant Taylor, plus there's a couple of guys that could pop and be there, like based off some stuff I've listened to. I mean, I listened to the Baseball America White Sox podcast today that
hmm.
came out with JJ Cooper and Bill Mitchell was raving about how Caleb Bonham looked like in Arizona. So obviously, like nobody saw him, right? But like, I mean, he's good playing backfield games. So if he does like anything close to that in Kannapolis as a 19-year-old or whatever, like I'm sure he'll be knocking on the doorstep too. And then, Jairo Iriarte has been very mixed, but he's been on top 100s before. So I mean, that's like three additional guys to the six that they already had. So yeah, I mean, I think people have kind of scoffed at like thinking the system's like not good, but I mean, it's pretty much top five everywhere other than Keith Law. Um, and if you're listening to this in podcast form on Tuesday, the top 30 at Baseball America should be out. It's out tomorrow. So
I've been waiting for that. I did not know that that episode dropped. Had I known, I would have listened to it already.
yeah, well, so they dropped the AL East top 30s, or one of them. Maybe it was the West. I don't know. They dropped the East, I think, today. The Central divisions are tomorrow, so that's out.
Hmm. Um, so I just want to bring this up here because I hadn't mentioned it yet. Wolf brings up that Garfine did a interview with Davis Martin and that he likes the kid. He's got some moxie. I made the tweet yesterday. It was like my Super Bowl of spring training yesterday with Davis Martin, followed by Mason Adams. That was phenomenal. And yes, Mason Adams did give up a home run to Freddie Freeman, but you know, keeping that offense stifled for 4 innings was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I know. I kind of laughed at the tweet. I mean, that's your brand for sure. So I was trying to think who else they could have brought in, like a Addison Coffee or Garrett Shanley comes in relief, like some,
Oof.
like
Yeah, that
that's
would be
like
good.
yeah, yeah. I was like, who's next? Like this is like the Ian Eskridge bingo card right here.
Oh, it would have worked for me. I would have been very happy had Garrett Shanley come in for Mason. Um so Doug asked, what would it take for
Oh,
Riku to make the top 30?
uh, getting rid of about 15 guys off the list, probably. I don't know. I mean, the hard part about Riku is he's like more fun than he is like an actual prospect, just because like I don't know that he can play anywhere defensively. And if it's left field, it's really unorthodox. It's like poor man's Stephen Kwan kind of, so while he's cool and I hope we see him in the big leagues cuz he's like really awesome and fun to watch, it's just not the type of profile that like cracks lists in a good system.
Just as a little bit of a teaser, I'm a lot less militant with these top 30 lists than most people, and I put 2 names on the end of my list that are not on. Well, I mean, Riku's there, but the other guy that I put there, he's not on any other list. But the way that I look at these lists a lot of the times, I kind of just want to put people's names out there that I think that there might be something there. And that's not necessarily that I think that they're better than some of the guys that I didn't put on there. Uh, but just having their name out there, I think is important. But do you? So I told you that I took all of the names that we had on our just miss list, and I kind of grouped them together. And I tried to do it in somewhat of a logical way here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with three of the guys that, well, two of the three guys that you mentioned on the tweet that you put out about the just miss list. Eric Adler, Perlander Baroa, and Addison Coffee. Just missed all three high leverage guys, and all three of them could definitely get a look here in 2025.
Yeah, and Paulette's on there too. Like Paulette
I
was
got him
just
grouped with somebody else though.
okay, okay, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, all three of them. I think what Adler probably goes back to Double A, but I mean, Coffee will definitely be in Triple, and Baroa would have been in the big leagues like without his injury. So, I also think, like in a system as deep as the White Sox is right now, it's tough to put like relievers on the list. I do think Paulette will be on at other places. I mean, the way we do the list is there's six of us that do it. We count up the prospect points, And then I pretty much stick with that unless there's something that I feel is like really egregious. And that we kind of have a discussion and shift some guys around. But yeah, they just, I mean, you add four guys in the Boston trade this offseason plus a Rule 5 guy. I mean, five people have to come off because they didn't really get rid of anyone. So, it just kind of is the way that it is. But yeah, I mean, those guys, I think we could see, I mean, Coffee whenever. I don't know what much he has to prove. Um, obviously. And then Adler is right on the cusp too. He'll probably be in AA, but there's nothing stopping them from bringing him up straight from there.
Addison Coffee, great tattoos, wonderful shoe game, nice change up. I like him a lot. So the second group of guys that I had are guys that have both been starters at one point and have been in the system for a little while, and that's Peyton Paulette and Tanner McDougal. Your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, so I think Tanner probably stays in the rotation to start, maybe, but I think we've both been pretty open about the fact that I think he could be an absolute monster reliever if they decided to do that. I mean, he's still really young as the high school guy. I'm sure he still wants to start. But look, man, you start looking at the rest of the system. Like if this goes the way the White Sox want it to, he's either going to get moved for something to somebody that thinks he can start, or he's probably going to move to relief at some point. And it's not just like, oh yeah, he could be decent in relief. Like I think he could be like a powerhouse in relief. So yeah, he's like right on the cusp there. He's a guy that Keith Law like mentioned this summer still.
I think he had
But
him 15th.
yeah, something like that. Because you look at the stats and it's like not great, but his stuff is still like really, really good.
Yeah, you look at the spin rates on his curveball and his fastball and everything's, analytic darling, as he was talked about when he first was drafted, is that he was the analytic darling of
When he's
the
still like
White
21 or
Sox
something
draft.
crazy.
Yeah, still
Yeah.
very young. So, and then obviously Paulette, you know, once he got moved into the bullpen this past season, is unhittable. So the question comes this year is, does he immediately go into the bullpen to start off the year, or are they going to try and bring him back to that starting role? And I don't have an answer for that yet.
No, I think he's the closer at Birmingham. I don't think there's any reason to. I just some of the issues that he had, like he really took to the relief role. I think he's a little bit more advanced because of how many innings he threw. I just don't know why you'd bother with it at this point. I mean, I guess you could say like, oh, he was a second round pick. You'd like to have him start as much as possible, but I mean, even if he's a setup guy, it's a pretty successful pick if you look at the White Sox history of second rounders.
Yeah, for sure. So the next group of three guys that I have, one that you mentioned already, and Tyler Schweitzer, but Seth Keener and Riley Gowans, three starters in the system. Both Schweitzer and Gowans both ended up in Double A to end the year last year. Were members of the Barron's championship team, and Keener, who was in Winston Salem, also had very good year.
Yeah.
But we wonder about the projectability there, and that's kind of been one of those things with Keener that we're kind of wondering about. Your thoughts on those three?
Yeah, I think Keener's another guy where, scouts really thought he could start. I think like he's another I think Keener's a John Stott guy, I think. I don't remember, but yeah, I mean the White Sox thought, they saw him at Wake Forest pitch in relief. They thought that he could start. He's another guy where I think if they just decide to put him back in the bullpen, like his stuff's really going to play up too, fastball slider, and then he's a potential member of your next like pretty good bullpen. I mean, he might start at Winston this year and stay in the rotation like just because, but there's definitely like bullpen utility. And then I think Gowans is interesting because he's like super unheralded. He's a local guy from Libertyville, pitched well at Illinois, was a late round pick. They got him as a throw in the Bummer trade. And he just did nothing but perform. He was good like all year. In a starter's role, he's just a big workhorse.
I find it pretty crazy that they managed to get Riley Gowans as just kind of like
Yeah,
the
he's just a toss in ninth rounder, like, whatever.
yeah, he was a guy that the Braves had put in a relief role in the for the A ball team.
Yeah,
White Sox
I'd
move
love the
him to starter
story,
again.
like the story on that about who wanted him, right? You know that that's like, they're going through the package and they're taking all the guys that nobody else wanted, and somebody's like, "Oh, make sure you get, you know, this guy too. Get right. Oh, see if you can get Riley Gowens too." And Anthopoulos is like, "Yeah, sure." Like, and it's just him and Schuster are going to be the last men standing.
Yeah. So I have to imagine that probably Bannister had at least somewhat of an idea of what was going on there.
I'm guessing
I
like
would
the
think.
local scouts probably saw him when he was at Libertyville in Illinois. Love to ask. Maybe I'll ask JJ Lally and see what I can get.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you could between yeah, if you're gonna do the local thing, that makes a lot of sense, I suppose.
They
Maybe
probably
a
had
guy that they were
a long history. Maybe they were going to take him in they popped him early. It's kind of like the Opper story. I know you're probably going to get to him, but
he's
that
next.
there's like a weird story on him too.
So the next group is somebody that was actually talked to earlier today by our Elijah Evans in Arizona, Christian Opper and Pierce George. And the only reason that I grouped these two together is because we haven't seen much of either of them. So that's why I threw them them together today. What do you think? When are we going to start to see Christian Opper, show up somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping he's in the Kannapolis rotation because I don't really know what else he has to prove in Arizona. He was like really super raw. He was a Wisconsin prep kid, former basketball player. The White Sox were going to take him in the 11th round 2 years ago. It was the year they took Jacob Burke and Baldwin. They like literally he was going to be their 11th rounder. They had a deal to sign him, and the A's took him for some reason, and then did not sign him. So he had to go to Florida Golf, some, whatever community college for a year. And then the White Sox took him the following year in round five, and paid him like 550K. So a real bonus. He's just a big athletic lefty with really good stuff. He doesn't throw a ton of strikes, but the stuff's really good. Yeah, I'm curious to see whether he goes to Arizona to repeat that or whether he's in the Kannapolis rotation.
They probably had to take that money and give it to Kyler Murray to not play baseball.
Yeah, well, and I was on I don't know. I don't know if you. I think that was 2 years ago, probably. So you probably. I don't know if you heard the recorded call, but like Shirley was like smirking the whole time and kind of like laughing, like because somebody like had because he brought up that story after the draft, and then somebody's like, "Well, why did they do that?" And he was like, like just kind of because that's just not the way this goes. Like you don't take players unless you have like deals in place generally.
Yeah, that's an odd one. Pierce George.
Yeah, really interesting. Bill Mitchell brought him up today too on the Baseball America podcast that I heard.
Hmm.
He's just one, he was 13th rounder last year over slot. Your typical like power bullpen arm potentially that college coaches couldn't pitch because like their jobs depend on winning. And that doesn't mean that he's nothing. It just means that, he has command issues but I mean, you could tell the coaches in Kannapolis, like we want to see this guy 4 times this week because we don't really care how many games you win. You pitch in the University of Alabama, you can't really do that. So we'll see. We'll see if like any of the development takes. I mean, he's just one of the interesting reliever profiles from their last draft class. They've obviously traded one in Aaron Combs, but they still have um, the guy from Pittsburgh, Fox, and then
Yeah, Phil Fox.
They took Blake Shepherdson in round 11. There's just like a whole host of these guys. Pierce George, probably the most upside of all of them, um, but also he could just never throw strikes and stay in Kannapolis forever too. So we've seen both ends of this.
Yeah, seen him throw a couple of times, and the stuff is there. It's just whether or not consistently throw strikes or not. So, all right. So the next group of gentlemen that we have here are Tim Elko, Wilfred Veras, and Riku Nishida. So we've already answered the question about Riku that he the skill set is a lot of fun, but the ability to pop into that top 30 for, like for the entire
Mm.
Future Sox site is gonna be a little rough getting him there.
Yeah,
But
I wish, like, if I trusted that he could play an average second base, it would change my mind a lot. Because like, that profile works,
that's fair.
you know? I just think if it's, like, left field or DH, like, it's gonna be crazy.
Could you imagine seeing Riku at DH?
Yeah,
That
like,
would be
just
that would be insane.
yeah,
Here comes Riku out here at 5'6", DHing. Yeah. All right.
love it.
And
Obviously, Elko, I mean, might be on the team at some point this year. It's just really hard, like, even, right? He's old, obviously. It's not his fault. It's just he was in college a long time. Right, first base. He's got a mash. If he does, maybe people look stupid when he's hitting 30 homers in the big leagues. Like, I'm fine with that. That's okay.
I'm going to circle around back to him later in this episode when we get to more of the spring training major league stuff here. But moving along, Wilfred Veras,
Oh yeah.
another one of these guys, where the skill set seems incomplete. We're not 100% sure whether or not he can actually play the outfield in the major leagues. Is that going to be something that is going to be viable? And also, can he manage to uh, work on his plate discipline enough to be useful in the
Right.
major leagues?
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about him either on a previous episode or off stream. The problem I have with some of these guys is like, yeah, like he can hit, but like, can he hit for enough power to make it so the not walking and the no defensive position like don't matter, right? Like there's those guys in the big leagues, right? Oh, this guy has no defensive value, but they hit 30 bombs. Like, and I just
Jordan Alvarez.
right, like I don't know that he's hitting 30 homers in the big leagues. And if it's 14 homers, like it's just not going to work if there's not much defensive utility and a ton of strikeouts. But yeah, I mean Wilfred, I mean I hope to see him playing in Charlotte because I think he'll mash there, and then we'll kind of see what it looks like. But yeah, he's another one of these guys that just kind of got squeezed because the system got pretty good in a hurry.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer a couple of these
Yeah,
questions here. James asks Riku better than Altuve in left, and I will say I'd say it's probably about equal, but the difference being that Altuve hits 35 home runs a year.
yeah, like Riku has zero power, which
He hit one last year. He
yeah,
hit one.
is it 20? It's 20 power though, right? Like, I mean, which is fine. That's like not his game. Like he's on base. This dude is on base all the time. He gets hit by pitches. Like it is tremendous.
Yeah.
But it's just that's why I said it's like it's I, I can't call him Stephen Kwan. That's not fair to Stephen Kwan, but it's like that type of like player.
Okay, Uncle Ted. This is true. Riku Nishida did have a 775 OPS, but when more than half of your
Yeah, over
OPS is
400 of
coming from
it's
OBP,
yeah.
that's not I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not like especially in advanced A and single A, like we need to see this against
Right.
like the top competition
Well,
here.
so it's a similar question to like there's a lot of people who don't buy into Chase Mydroth, right? Because it's a little bit of the Madrigal argument. Now, look, I think they're different players. I think he has much better plate discipline and he wants to walk and this and that, right? But when you get to the big leagues, like if you're not going to impact the baseball, big league pitchers are not going to walk you, right? So, we'll see it with Mydroth. We'll see if he can make an impact without like being this like high exit velocity guy. Like, if they throw him strikes, is he going to hit a million singles, which then the profile might work, or are people just going to challenge him and then he's going to be nothing? It's kind of what happened to Nick Madrigal. Like, will it be similar with Riku when big league pitchers just like aren't afraid to walk him? They'll just, you know, okay, fine, hit it on the ground again.
Yeah, I mean, I like Riku's bat is exactly like what I said to you earlier about Jacob Amaya before we got on stream. Is that the ball actually impacts Jacob Amaya's bat?
Hmm.
You know, um, I kind of feel the same way with Riku. That just he's not impacting the baseball, and I'm not expecting him to, but the question is that when you don't do that, you have to be able to, at least be able to hit it into the outfield, and we'll see if he can do that when the defenses get better and the pitching gets better.
Yeah, for sure. So talk about like a strange like dichotomy there. Like the group that you picked, have them stand next to each other. Elko, Varys, and Riku Nishida. Put Riku in the middle, like
Like that picture that we got
with him and George. Yeah, it's
from
great.
Jerry, where
Yeah.
he's high, where
Oh, it's
Mogollon's
Mogollon. Yeah.
jumping up and high fiving George Wolko.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back into the questions here a
Okay.
little bit farther because I want to answer them before we get all the way to the bottom of the list here. Um, so Doug asked, "Is Wilfred Veras not in top 30 because of strikeouts or limited position?" I feel that we answered that
Yeah.
one pretty well.
Want me to answer it? Yes.
Yes.
No, I think
Yes.
honestly, Doug, like I added up the totals and there were just like 30 players with more points than him. And then we did kind of debate. Like there's a couple of guys who are on the back end of our list who we really wanted to fit on. And then we just kind of left Varys off. I wouldn't be surprised if Varys is on the pipeline. I'll actually be kind of curious to see if he's on the pipeline list to see who fell off there. Will interest me a little bit because there are some tough decisions to make, like towards the back end of this list.
Yeah, see, I feel like Callus is a little bit more I don't know. I don't feel like I would be surprised actually if Varys is
With
on
the
the
addition
MLB
with
pipeline one.
with the additions, I would be too.
Yeah.
I will say like the Baseball America list, like there's an extra 10 on that, and guys like McLean and Saki, and there's like they're not even on the Baseball America list. So, which I thought it was a little bit interesting. But they also have Thorpe on, I believe Thorpe and Baldwin on or something. So that's probably why.
Yeah, the Thorpe
Yeah.
the age-old Thorpe question.
Yes.
Wolf, we will get to that at least partially
Mhm.
later on here in the stream here. All right. All right, so moving along here. Um Next on the list that I had was Rony Hernandez and Javier Mogollon. Just another two guys that just missed. Rony Hernandez was on it last year. Javier Mogollon also, I believe, was on it last year. I'm pretty positive he was there as well. Just casualties of an influx of more talent.
Yeah, I mean the issue with Mogollon, and obviously like I think I linked the Badler conversation in the story, right? If you want to go back and listen to our old conversation with Ben Badler. I mean, Mogollon's got a ton of power, like out of a little bat. Like speaking of second baseman, right, or a little body, whatever, might be a big bat. I don't know, but I mean, 40% plus K rate, like in Arizona, is just not going to work, regardless of what the rest is, right? Like it's a lot of extra base hits, it's a lot of walks, but I think it was 46% K rate in Arizona. And he doesn't have a ton of defensive value either. So, I think definitely a prospect, a guy to keep an eye on, but just not top 30 in this system. And then I think Rony Hernandez is probably the biggest snub for us this site. I mean, if there's somebody that we had to say like, man, this guy really should be on, my question would be, okay, fine, then who do you take off, right? Um, but I mean, pretty good success. And he's only 19 with OBP, like in the low minors. He does have like barely any power, which is going to be an issue going forward. So that's probably the one knock. But he can catch and he gets on base a ton and he's super young. So, if he's back on it midseason, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that is that's essentially after watching him all last year, Rony Hernandez. Just the I was expecting a little bit more impact of the baseball than we got, you know. But it turns out that the scouting reports of him having a lighter hitting bat were, fairly accurate.
Yeah, he's just on. It's like a very OBP aided WRC plus, and you know, like it's just he's on base all the time. Um, and at catcher, that's probably valuable, but we'll see what happens if he's at Winston this year if it's similar.
Yep, agreed. All right, so the next grouping of guys is just it's like the Yahtzee of DSL players.
Of international
Alejandro
signings,
Cruz,
yes.
Abraham Nunez, Orlando Patino, Jerdrick Profar, and Luis Reyes.
Yeah. So this is the first year in a while that their top international signing like didn't make our 30. I feel great about that. It's always tough, man. You take this like last year, like Edward Herrera gets Eduardo Herrera, this big power prospect gets 1.8 million, and you read all this stuff about him, and neither one of us have ever seen him play, even on video. And it's like, well, I'll put him at 25. And it's like, I'm glad that we didn't have to do that this time. We'll know a lot about Alejandro Cruz in a couple of months. Hopefully he's like 15 on the midseason list. That would be tremendous, right? If we're debating how high we have to put Alejandro Cruz, I think we all kind of as a group felt collectively like leaving him off in this cycle made sense when there were just guys that should go on ahead of him. Patino's interesting. I mean, I think Badler dropped like a Puig comp, and then he said, "Oh no, it's not a Puig comp. Their bodies are just that whole thing." Um, I mean, it'll be interesting. Both of those guys are in the DSL. Profar was the best player in the DSL on their team last year. He'll be stateside in Arizona. He's the younger brother of um, Jurickson Profar. And then Abraham Nunez kind of struggled, but there's a part of the blurb in there where he really turned it on late in Arizona, where he made some swing adjustments and was a lot better. It was like an 800 OPS guy down the stretch, and then I have no idea how he did or how he looked during instructional league, but he was there too.
Yeah, it would be nice to possibly get
Mhm.
somebody's opinion on what happened out in the instructional league because I haven't heard. I've heard almost nothing about the instructional league this year, other than the videos that I saw, which look kind of promising. A lot of cool stuff going on, but as far as performance and modifications made other than pitches,
Yeah, I mean,
made to.
even after that, like the Bridge League or whatever, like Bill Mitchell has like kind of talked about how good Caleb Bonham looks, and I know that there was like Blake Larson was like had kind of flashed a little bit before his injury, but I mean, we don't know what that means. Like they're playing backfield games against other orgs, basically.
Yep. All right. So that is the just miss list. So
20 names.
20 names. Um,
I'm sure you can come
Uncle
up with. I'm
Ted.
sure you can come up with 10 more that I left off too.
Oh, we could probably definitely
Yeah,
come up
yeah,
with 10
yeah.
more
We
for
could do
sure.
it like
We
yeah.
should do the top 30 and then the next 30 that just
Just
missed, just
the
to
the
mirror
just
it.
the just missed does not come out tomorrow. So
It does not. Uncle Ted, I don't think Wilco has ever played first.
high
I could
school high
find
school
out,
he did.
but oh, did he?
Yeah, a
Okay.
lot. Yeah.
I thought he was
No, it was
all
weird because in
outfield.
high school, like like believe it or not, like his body like is way better now. Like when he was a high school player, like
Just a twig.
he's like a sophomore at Downers North. Like everybody said, like, oh yeah, this guy hits bombs, but he strikes out all the time, but he's a first baseman. So and then also then like when the Sox took him, I was surprised that they projected him to the outfield and he's as athletic as he is. Like that's why the pick was so good. It's not just and he might be at first ultimately, right, at some point, but not now.
Yeah, you want to try and retain that value as long as you can that he can play somewhere else other than the place where you stand still and don't throw the ball. Uh, to answer Vince's question here,
Not yet.
we have not released our top 30 yet, but we have released the just missed, which is on futuresox.net. So if you are
Yeah.
looking for scouting reports on the guys that are not going to end up on the top 30, but are still actually worth talking about, guys. That's the wonderful thing about the system and having depth is that we get to talk about a lot of people and not just five guys. Burgers.
Yeah. And we don't have to mention Joey Gallo at all. That's for
Oh.
our fellas on Wednesday can do that instead. No, so
Shout out to Danny.
yeah, so like full disclosure, tomorrow 16 through 30 comes out. I'd like to publish the entire list for Patreon subscribers, but WordPress is kind of giving me some issues, so I got to figure that out after the stream.
Yep. So Max has a good question, which I've actually been thinking about as well, which is when are Schultz and Hagen Smith
Ooh,
pitching again?
I
I
thought they
haven't
said
seen.
Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday.
Is it okay?
I believe so. Merkin or somebody had a tweet about it, and then Mike. I think there's roster cuts coming either tomorrow or Wednesday as well. DVS intimated that, so it won't be them, obviously, but there's going to be some cuts to minor league camp coming here shortly.
Yep. Uh, answering. I'm gonna move to White Sox spring training here and some of the results, and then we're gonna start. We're gonna go through a few topics here about things that have kind of been developing over the last couple of. Well, actually, I guess the last 2 weeks. Um, Jamie asks if Baldwin does he make the big league club out of spring training? I mean, obviously, I think it's still too early to tell. I mean, obviously, there's injuries, and I mean, to be honest, he really hasn't gotten that many at bats comparatively to some of these other guys. Which I kind of have to imagine the guys who have been getting a lot of at bats are the guys who are really on the bubble and are you know first ones to go, like a Jacob Amaya and Tristan Gray and guys like that that they don't have really any ties to per se.
Yeah, those will be the. I mean, like a guy like Lenin Sosa is going to be in camp the whole time. Like when you see them trying to play him at first, like they're trying to find like a way to keep some of these guys. Like they're moving them around. Like my Droth played some shortstop today because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they don't have anybody to play at shortstop right now. Like if you asked me who the opening day shortstop was, I don't know. It's like the throw my hands up gif, right? Like it's just, no clue. Like like I don't know. So yeah, those are probably the types of guys like Oscar Colas. Like is he gonna go back to Miami? Like we don't need to see him. Like there's just certain guys who obviously are not going to be on this team. I think what Maton homered the other day, right? He might be done. So we'll see. And maybe a lot of pitching too.
Yeah, I'm up for seeing all of the pitchers and seeing what
Yeah.
see what they're bringing out there. I mean the issue comes with it being spring training and guys only pitching
Mm.
maximum one time through the order most of the time, other than Jairo Iriarte, who, as far as I didn't count how many batters he faced today, but it felt like he went through a full game today with
Yeah.
how many pitches he was throwing.
Well,
Um,
and you like certain guys, like obviously you're gonna see Schultz and Smith one more time, and that might be the last time. Like I feel like obviously your Mason Adams, your guys like that, I feel like, Nastrini, Eater, Adams, I think we probably think they're gonna start in Charlotte. But like they're still kind of competing for jobs. Schultz, Smith, Grant Taylor, like they're not competing for jobs. Like you could get them to minor league camp, get them in rotation so they're lined up to start, their minor league seasons at some point here. And that's would be my guess.
so the White Sox have managed to get a couple of wins here. Uh, they managed to put up 18 runs the other day,
Yeah.
which was shocking to me. I'm not used to seeing them score, half of that. So that was a lot of fun,
Do
that
you
one.
do you remember Merkin told me that they did the same thing at Goodyear last year? I must not have been paying attention.
Hmm.
Like that was Seattle,
I
right?
do
Like he
remember
said they did the
last
same
year
thing where they
against
put
the
up like
Mariners.
15. Yeah.
Yeah, against the Mariners. That was the game that Jacob Burke made that insane Superman catch over on the left field line. I do remember that, and I do remember that they scored runs. So it just doesn't happen very often. That's all.
No, a couple days in a row though. I mean, I do think though, like there's some small signs, not to take much out of like with the offense a little bit, like guys taking some better at bats. I don't know if that's just because you go out and get some professional hitters like Mike Talkman and Brandon Drury and it's spring training and they just like know what they're doing, but I think there's it's been a little bit better from that side.
So speaking of this, uh, you know, I was going to bring up Luis Robert Jr.'s play and just how he's been, how what the results have been. The guy's got almost, I think, like a 1350 OPS, and then Brandon Drury as well. Every time he's in the game, he seems to be making something happen as well. And he had what, like a 18 WRC plus last year or something like that.
It's real
Something,
bad. Yeah.
yeah. awful. So one thing that we had discussed earlier today that I wanted to bring up because I find it very interesting is what do you think the differences are uh, analytically and from the coaching staff? Because when I look at the at bats that I'm seeing, and I know you're not watching as much spring training baseball as I am because you just don't watch spring training as much. But the at bats look a lot better. It seems to me that they're a lot more prepared for what they're seeing most of the time, at least earlier in the games when they're the pitchers that are that are announced. Um, what do you think about what we've seen so far in spring training?
I mean, I just like love to know if Brian Fuller and his people have had an impact, if the tech is helping, like has Luis Robert like been introduced to the traject machine? Like he's typically somebody that just kind of goes up there and looks for a pitch and just relies on his like natural ability. So I am kind of, just like kind of curious to see which guys really take to finally having stuff that like the rest of the league uses all the time, right? Like and just like how much that's helping. And obviously, like, look, none of this could matter at all. I know Beef's guy, Lenny Sosa, looks pretty good too. Like carrying over from his Venezuelan Winter League. I don't know where the hell he's gonna play, because he is a bad defender. But I just yeah, I mean I will say the new data and hitting coaches have not worked for Miguel Vargas. So that has been not so good, but yeah, I mean, you pick up a Brandon Drury. I mean, like Brandon Drury's probably has to kind of make the team. You would think if he continues doing this because he's one of their better guys.
Yeah, the Miguel Vargas thing has been a an adventure. I was expecting, with the 20 extra pounds of beans and cheese or whatever, I was expecting a little bit more from him, and just it's not so far. Nothing's translated at all, and with the fact that he has zero options left, if I'm choosing between him and Lenine Sosa, if I'm keeping a guy without options, to me, Lenine Sosa is a better defender than Miguel Vargas is, from what I've seen.
Well, I wonder if
Um,
like, do you think the injuries open up like the opportunity to just DH him and focus on like, dude, just like see if you can get on base instead of worrying about being terrible at third. So I know they wanted to kind of rotate the DH. I mean, I think their best team right now includes probably like Drury and Rojas playing third. So then you could play some other guys over at second. Um, but if they're committed to Vargas playing third, that's kind of an issue.
yeah, and especially since they had already anointed him as the starting third baseman for the team, and then he goes out the very next day and commits an error and, uh, just completely whiffs on another one that's right at him that's credited as a hit that when Noah Schultz was pitching, that
Yeah,
it's just a problem.
it is. Yeah, Vince says, "Don't you have to keep Vargas for minimally the first half? I don't think you can give up this quick." I agree. Like I don't think they're going to give up on him because he was like their big addition. I just don't think you can hand him the third base job because he's like not good over there.
Yeah, even keeping him on the roster, like it's just a dead spot, and if you don't see any positive feedback from the things that you've been doing to try and improve his game, if you're not seeing any of the returns on that investment of your time, what point is there in keeping him on the roster? Is just my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. It's one neg. I mean, that's a you know, who's their Gene Watson is their scouting guy. I mean, Gene Watson was a big fan of Vargas. I think he kind of led the charge on that move. That's doesn't look too good so far.
Yeah, he said he had him targeted for a few years. So watching that and then seeing the results and then hearing him say that, it makes me kind of wonder. And I was actually thinking this last week, I was like, well, what was Gene Watson looking at? That's my question.
A guy that
I
walked
genuinely don't know.
a guy that walked a lot and somehow hit bombs in the PCL.
Yeah, like that's the
I don't know.
crazy bit, is that if you can hit, like 25 home runs or whatever it was that he hit in the PCL, you would think that he would at least be able to hit, like one in the
Yeah,
majors, just one,
yeah.
just something to show me, hey, the power's in there, like he's just done absolutely nothing. So,
Who's the Pirates prospect that they have in camp from the Padres? Cal Mitchell, right?
oh, Cal Mitchell, yeah.
I think he hit 25 for wherever San Diego Rancho Cucamonga. But their AAA affiliate I think is also PCL, and he hit like 25 bombs last year too. It's just like PCL inflated numbers, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's something that we have always talked about is that the PCL, is the numbers out there are always bonkers because most of their parks have like rough equivalent to Charlotte as a park factor. So, people talk about Charlotte being, a bandbox, where just stuff gets hit out all over the place. Well, every park in the PCL is pretty much like that. So you'd
Yeah,
figure that
and it's
maybe
and it's
one.
thin air.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this Doug Wirtz question here.
Yeah, neither.
Both of them
Oh, they
dropped
or both.
off.
Yeah.
Doug, yeah,
Yeah,
that
so he
neither
asked
one is
about
on the list.
Jacob Burke and Terrell Tatum. Neither one are on this cycle, and we wrote up 50 guys. So
Yep, this is comment from Wolf here is pretty good. I just hope Getz is man enough to smoke him. If he can't play, he can't play. Don't force it. And that's something that the old regime used to do is they used to keep guys on for years and years and years and just keep trotting them out there hoping that somehow they were going to magically find something and then they never did and you
yeah.
just wasted, 3 years.
All right, you can't choose death if you had to have somebody at first. Is it Andrew Vaughn or Miguel Vargas?
Oh, I mean, Andrew Vaughn. I mean,
Yeah,
he's shown that he's at least a competent major league player. I mean, granted, he'll go into slumps for a month, but like usually at the end of the year, at least he's league average. I mean, like he's not going to hit you 35 home runs, but then again, is Miguel Vargas going to hit you five? I don't think so.
yeah. I don't know in the big leagues. Like I don't know. And they said that he put on weight too, but it was all
Beans
from
and cheese.
apparently. Yeah,
Um, so we have one of the things that you had mentioned is with the injuries of maybe this opens up some spots for guys to kind of make it in there. Uh, Today, Austin Slater scratched for a lat. I don't know how serious it is, but this is one of the guys that we had slated for the outfield. So with him being gone, and you got Benintendi with the broken hand, what are we doing in the outfield? That's the question.
how many players need to get injured before Chris Getz plays Oscar Colas in the outfield? Like,
But
no.
I
I
heard
mean,
he's a first baseman now.
yeah.
So
I mean, does this open a spot for Dominic Fletcher? I mean, Benintendi can talk all he wants about making it back for opening day. I would guess he starts on the IL. Guys that miss spring training suck. Like it's just the way that it goes. Like there's no way that he's just gonna like rush back and be able to play right away and be fine. Um, and then obviously what Austin Slater is probably gonna play against lefties only, and Michael Taylor only hopefully plays in like the eighth and ninth inning. My goodness gracious, is he bad? Um, but yeah, I mean, those are both like, bench secondary type pieces. I don't know what they do. I mean, I think it definitely opens the door for them to not keep five outfielders and go with infielders instead. I think if you had to play Brandon Drury in left field, you could, right? So um, I just think it opens up the door for maybe multiple infielders when you wouldn't like maybe you keep Sosa and Drury and somebody else when you weren't going to be able to do that before.
yeah, and Michael A. Taylor. Yeah, I tweeted about him, and I said I don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't expecting an 80% strikeout
Yeah,
rate.
it just is kind of a waste of time on a bad team. Like I just don't like I understand being scared of like not having a center field defender if like you all of a sudden traded Robert or something, but like if you trade Robert Like just play Dominic Fletcher in center. Like who cares? Like it doesn't matter at that point. Like once you've like traded your best player and you're gonna win 50 games again. I don't really understand the Michael A. Taylor signing.
I mean, we talked about it when it happened that we didn't really understand like what the point was, other than a Luis Robert trade. But I think what did he have like a 83 WRC plus or something like that, or maybe
Yeah.
even less than that last year.
Yeah, I
So
don't even think it was that much. I mean, he was a positive WAR player though because of defense. Like
that's what it was.
he's
That's
a
what it was.
great defensive player. Um, but like on this, like who cares on this team? Like that doesn't
Uncle
make any
Ted says, "Bring up Braden Montgomery, center
Braden
field."
Montgomery center field. So I am curious to see how much center field he plays if he goes straight to Winston with Sammy Zavala there.
Yeah, that's and we'll see. I mean, obviously, we'll see what the lineup is when we do the Future Sox showdown thing here in a couple of weeks. Find out where they, hopefully find out where they're going to line these guys up more often than not. But I mean,
Yeah.
might be a feeling out process as well because I know that Braden Montgomery could play center field, but it seems to me that the place that they have him slotted in for is right field, and
Yeah.
it's just center field is like in a pinch type thing. So
Right.
I would think
Yeah.
that they'd keep Sammy Zavala there, but who knows?
You would think so, but I mean, you're also gonna have like a Casey Saki. Does he just go play left? Like, do they kind of mix and match it? I don't really know. So there's no spring breakout like roster yet, right?
Not that I've seen. No.
And they're playing the Rockies.
Yes.
So do you think there's a chance in that game that they throw Schultz and Smith and Taylor, like, and they just like get an inning each or something, and that's like what it
Absolutely.
because
Last year,
this did not happen last year for the Sox.
well,
So
yeah, the Sox game got canceled because of rain. But last year you had Skeens versus Jackson Holiday. So I don't, I think that these teams are truly showcasing who's in their system, and they're letting these guys go out and pitch an inning. I would think that you might see
that
all
one will
of the
be
good
fun.
pitching.
Yeah, yeah.
So for the Rockies, they'll throw Chase Dolander, and maybe
Yeah,
they'll
they got a
pitch him
few.
again
Yeah,
a couple times.
They got a few other guys. Charlie Condon be playing probably.
Yeah, I mean, they got a couple of guys. Zach Fiends actually looked halfway decent. I don't know if he might actually make the Rockies roster at this point.
Yeah,
I feel
who's
like he's
there?
been in this
You're a fantasy baseball guy, right? I didn't know who Brenton Doyle or whoever that guy was. He was
great
awesome
center
last. He was
fielder. Yeah,
awesome last year. Yeah,
yeah, he's a lot of fun.
he's like very very good. I was like, who is this Rocky? That's awesome.
Yeah, they had like they have like a guy or two, and that's pretty much about it. I mean, you saw
Hmm.
their record, and you
Yes,
see where they're projected to be this
I
year.
think they might be the only team worse than the White Sox this year. I mean, the Marlins are going to be kind of bad too, but those three not great.
It's gonna be close.
Ooh, talk about this question from Wolf because you watched it and it was
Oof.
much better than the first outing, obviously.
Yeah, so the first outing for Shane Smith, was he couldn't find he couldn't find his spots. He was just having a lot of problems throwing strikes in the first inning, and he was after his first inning. White Sox Twitter, I talked to we were Beef Loaf was goofing around on Twitter the other day. The White Sox Twitter already cut him and sent him on his way after his first inning in the first game. I tweeted that he was coming back out for he might come back out for a second inning. Somebody said, "Please, no, we don't need to see him anymore." And he came out, had a great second inning. This time he comes out, house on fire, throwing 100 miles an hour and hitting his spots like he normally does. And it was nice. So
So I think everything like I read about him, and obviously like he's your typical like big bodied starter. Stuff will play up in relief. But I didn't know it would play up that much in relief. Like, so I was kind of thinking he'd be like their right handed like swing guy, or like, hey, our starter got bombed. Shane Smith will come in for 3 1/3. But like, should he, or should he be like their setup guy if he's gonna throw 100th like that all the time?
Well, I mean, I think that this is kind of one of those things like you wondered about Crochet, right? Is that
Yeah,
he hated his, how his body felt when he was going out there and warming up and then cooling down and then warming up and cooling down, felt 4 times a week. So, um, yeah, I don't, I like personally, if I'm looking at him and, I don't even know what you're talking about. That's something. Um, if he can start, I am always of the opinion, because I know that you need many starters. Have him start for as long as you can until it doesn't make any sense. I would rather have a guy that throws 100 miles an hour as a 3 inning mop up guy than have a setup guy for a team that's going to win 50 games.
yeah, and I mean he's going to be on the team just because like number one pick in the Rule 5 draft, they kind of have to keep him. But it's good that it's not going to be like a 7 ERA spring, and they keep him just because they kind of like him, where he kind of looks like he's pretty good actually. So, um, you know, Jordan Leisure, there's a note here about him like with a zero, and so Jordan
Yep.
Leisure like fixed some stuff and was pretty good towards the end of the year last year. So he could definitely be right back in the bullpen mix as well. And then obviously, like I've had some people reach out to me who apparently don't listen to our show, um, asking who Grant Taylor is, and I'm like, well,
Don't worry about it.
I was like, you're probably not going to see him for a while, but Grant Taylor is the next White Sox top 100 prospect. He just as long as he's healthy, um, he's gonna people are gonna know who he is very very soon.
Yep. We are apparently setting the bar pretty low. Got to be better than Tukey.
Ooh, is Tukey anywhere? He's got to be somewhere.
Last I saw, I think I saw him pitching in like the World Baseball Classic or the Caribbean Series. Maybe it was the
Mm,
Caribbean Series that I saw him in.
yeah. Can
Yeah.
you tell like all these funky relievers like unless you know who's pitching at the time? Like can you like all these new guys? Because they're all just like funky and weird. Like, can you differentiate Gus Varland and Penn Murphy and all these other guys? Like, if you just see them on the mound,
Those two I know. Who's the one?
Icert's probably easy because he
Isert
throws
was the
from
one.
so low. Like, yeah, but
Yeah, but I completely forgot about
who
him
he
until
was,
I
right?
saw him
Yeah,
pitch. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's there's just too many of these weird arm slots
They're
that
all
I
weird arm slots. Every guy. If
yeah.
you're weird, the White Sox want you.
Yeah, which I mean, hey, if that's going to work for Bannister, I'm in. I'm good with it. Let's see here. Um so Colson back spasms held for
Yeah,
precautionary
not a big deal.
reasons.
Not a big deal, apparently.
It's what we keep on hearing, and that he seems like he's fine. It's just they're being precautionary about it. And like I've had back issues, and
Yeah,
I know how it is when you get a pinched nerve in your back, that that will give you your back spasms. And sometimes it takes, even if you get your stuff lined back up correctly,
yeah.
sometimes it still does take a couple of days to be good, and it makes sense to hold them off and not send them out to play.
Do you think that Chicago weather in March and April good or bad for the back?
To be honest, I don't know that it really matters that much. But per Vince's comment here, 23 and having back issues isn't good. That's one of those things where when you're that old, having continued back, like pinch nerves and stuff like that's probably not the best thing in the world. So it kind of makes you a little bit apprehensive when you got a guy that's like 6'7" playing shortstop.
Yeah,
It's kind
and his
of
back hurts. Yeah.
yeah. So there is that.
Well, he's a shortstop, like, and they're gonna say he's a shortstop, like, until they acquire a shortstop, like in a deal, right? Like, if they trade Luis Robert to Cincinnati tomorrow, and Edwin Arroyo comes back, Colson Montgomery is getting a third base glove. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like the way it goes right now, I feel like.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I was going to move on to the stuff going on in MLB. Just a quick synopsis of some of these things going on here. As Howard mentions, today the Brewers signed old friend Jose Quintana to a 1 year deal.
Yeah.
So
He
that's
got Martin Perez money.
he did, and we talked about him signing with the Mets, but then the Mets were like, "Yeah, we're not signing any more pitching," and we were like, "Why?"
Yeah.
So
I just wonder how long he's had a $5 million offer on the table from the Brewers. Probably a while. He was seeing if he could get better, and then you know, I don't know that they're like a fringe contender. I think the Brewers. I mean, they always kind of find a way to be in it. I think the Cubs are significantly better, like roster wise, but that doesn't always mean everything. And then I think Cincinnati's pretty interesting with Francona and all those young guys. But like I think he's has he pitched everywhere in that division other than Cincinnati?
yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah, I think
The
so. Yeah,
Brewers, Cardinals,
yeah, Pirates.
yeah, Pirates, yeah, yeah, everywhere.
Yeah,
So Juan says, "What if the White Sox got Connor Norby for Fetty and Trey Sweeney for Kopech?" Well, ifs and buts were candy and
I
nuts.
know, right?
We'd all have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. That'd be
Would have been
interesting.
nice. Well, what are you gonna do? So other things going on. Luis Heel, the defending rookie of the year, strained lat, out for a while. So
Yeah.
that hurts the
In comes
Yankees.
Marcus Stroman.
Yes, and in comes Marcus Stroman, who will absolutely not be a reliever. Giancarlo Stanton apparently got shots in both of his elbows, and he's starting the season on the IL.
Mm.
So that's brutal. And then DJ Pepe LeMahieu is strained his calf the other day, so he's not going to be in the starting lineup for the Yankees for a little bit either. So they're already going through it, and they're not even through what 2.5 weeks of spring training yet.
Do they have anywhere for Nolan Arenado to play if they went and did that?
I mean, who are they gonna? I guess I mean they'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. So
Because DJ
that
LeMahieu was supposed to be the starting third baseman.
yeah.
So
Well, did you read that thing? Like Nolan Arenado like gave them a list of teams that he would go to, and Houston was on it, and then Houston traded for him, and he's like, you know what, I don't want to go. So he's basically
fair
stuck on
enough.
it. So he's basically stuck on a bad Cardinals team now.
Eesh. So
Submits a list of contenders that already have third baseman. These are the teams I'd go to. Oh, thanks, Nolan. It's not like not a huge help, buddy.
very useful. Well, then Jose Altuve decided to move. So, um, yeah. Anywho, so Sean Murphy, the Braves catcher, on the IL to start the year with a cracked rib. So they're hurting. I don't know. It's not nothing anyway. And the last one that I have is a divisional opponent, the Tigers. Parker Meadows is dealing with some sort of a nerve issue and isn't going to play, and they have no timeline on his return.
Yeah. I think it's the under on the Tigers. I don't even know what the number is, and I'll go under. I think this division can go a bunch of different ways, but the one that I think is the most likely is them in fourth place.
I mean, it's entirely possible. I can look at every single team in this division and give you a case for the under for every single one of them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely.
And for most of them, I have I could maybe make a case for a push. Like not any of them. Like I look at a couple of them and I'm like, okay, well maybe I could make a case for the over, but most of them, like, I don't find any of them that compelling, other than the fact that they're playing other teams in this division.
Can the White Sox go 500 against any of them?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. I mean, maybe 400.
Yeah. They were pretty good against Cleveland last year for the first time like in my life, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They still. How many did they win against Cleveland? Like
They
four
they
or something.
struggle. I think they yeah, like I think they were 5-7 or something, 5-8 against Cleveland. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anywho.
Adrian asked about Ishbia No, you're not gonna hear anything about that until, like, the Reinsdorfs want that out there. Um, so my guess is this. So I think this is linked a lot to. I do think within the next couple of weeks we're gonna have Chicago Bears stadium news in Arlington Heights, and I think once that happens, maybe we get some Ishbia sock stuff.
That sounds about right to me. That's kind of exactly how I'm expecting things to go here. Is that the Bears are going to finally, just announce that they've absolutely had it dealing with the city of Chicago, and just be like,
Yeah,
you know what, it's totally not worth our time. We're going to Arlington Heights. We've already got
to
everything
the land
zoned.
that we own. Yes, like
Yeah, that's not a complete nightmare to deal with. I mean, like dealing with the city of Chicago. I don't understand how they think that how they thought that this was going to get done, especially looking at the current landscape down there. Um, to be honest, I think it's going to be difficult for the White Sox as well without a lot of money, depending on who
Ishbia has a lot of money.
he does. So that's why I think that he's got a little bit better shot at getting this whole thing done. But we'll see. You got anything else this week, James? We're all right then. Thank you for hanging out, everybody. We appreciate you guys. You have been watching / listening to the Future Sox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app, except for this week, which is a Monday. But I promise you, we will be going back to Sundays um, on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find this podcast along with all of our written content at FutureSox.net. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on X at FutureSox, and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at FutureSox, there's a link to our Patreon in our channel description and at FutureSox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live, while helping us in the World Wide Web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening and commenting in the chat. You guys drive this community, and we appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out. You guys are the best, and we will talk to you next week. Have